A letter to go with God, titled The God of Words is Heard with or Without. Finally, dearly beloved, we are gathered here today, richer than gold. Let us pray to keep poor richly put, a beauty so charmed that naturally every miracle is readier than any test could try itself on love. So how beautiful are both good and bad allowed to be beautiful? Well, it doesn't take convincing for love to be infallible. And as we make love extraordinary, so is love with us. Only as teachable as vulnerability leads mystery to being worth its trust. Of unveiling vulnerably as one soul more convinced than to use convincing. Remembering the faith of the unknown is irresistible is the difference. Although the truth of true love is a teacher, the very mystery of true love is still always and only learning how to be the truth. A mystery so feminine that it's the only humanity evident that to the second rule of joy is the first difference, and such man is the art performed by that audience. A rare equal share, richer than gold. However good it is, it's just got to be better than that at being good. So superimposed holiness is humanity, and all humanity hurries to direct guidance, but that vulnerability is its image, the infinitely immortal morals thought like love and bought like grace. That life is lost, that love is found, that life never loses love. It's a freest fear to hope out in the power of such a prayer, says the soul, fearing everything, only other than fear, setting free fear itself. With everything other than before the light, vulnerability is the most built room for change. Just like anything added to the revelation of itself was tested so of its vulnerability to increase in that revealing power. Of the soul, more immortal to focus than the spirit, but of the spirit more infinite to focus than the soul. That spiritual livelihood is more revealed by manifestation than evaluation, and motivated so sincere. Far too often, we are infinitely manifested by our vulnerability to be evaluated by any of our self-strengths. And while all it vows to as is the idea of a God, it is the most calmly overwhelming infallibility. For written in the vow of revealing life is it interviewed near to all, as the mystery shall perform. So there is a power of prominence in poverty that is greater capability of embracing the true meaning behind God's performance that even the depths of one's worldly dying could not defy. As it is written, that what if God, in choosing to show his wrath, prepared us for destruction? For faith leaves no reason to turn away and then wonder why. And though there is no criteria to qualify that fate, it goes as far possible as impossibility rates. It is that of God, more unique than any and all of the most infinite fate. And only on average is it the most infinite number one plenty more in all reinforcement. So taken can the eyes only hold their imagination, bringing the thought to vulnerability and reminding it how brought from strength it is to be of, brings the news to joy slower than surprise. That is all we have to bring to what happened to infinity. The news that stayed slow was less premeditated, because there was more detail in less time. Fallen newer than from now superior to the search, to be as willing as the lift. If any of it was ever good, and then bad, or bad, and then good, it was better the whole time, because it set good to be as wildly organized as a soul of all. If dreaming so is a spaceless time, then most likely it's a timeless space, but a space overruled by and as the uncontainable more than more, and slept sudden to all the sorts of psychologically laboring agility. So created by its performance that it moves from beyond all the forms of force. As all the forms of force. Tested both on enabling its restfully durable existence of destination to mean the score, in measuring all living existence sealed of revelations infinitely open. We are at all the world's first latest update that ever met us. That God could grow any younger than born. As heavenly so, measuring our treasures looks more like gratitude than ownership anyhow. More equal than the count, more often than either way, there are two roads to love. To move love, or to be moved by love. To move love is the inner understanding. To be moved by love is the instant planning, and the inner understanding is Jesus, and the instant planning is God. The idea of it is so good to the heart that in no escaping it do we find more freedom along the way, as sure as the heart's livelihood. All varied, infinite, that the only hope is our soul, one more of the world, advertised more in form than words. Wouldn't Jesus have the world for name? How is it that makes a God out of the begotten intensity of humanity's holiness? How is it to fulfill all the new mysteries that marvel God? For the fate given to be taken from time's speed of arrival at such an eternally slowing of all powers, for that from outer release, yet only to be received all around, inside, having a point of infinite return to wonder. If fast and slow were ever racing, for that matter, to be readier than each other, then they probably are. As patient as God, freely primed as only youth can mature in remembrance of compassion, it came to be and from. All paths the spirits are free to take are very impressive and impressed. They just put it in everyone and everything else as one of who they are, one of God, with mystery always on display. However, God has become a truth to please, new in the ways of finding all true. We may as godly well have all holiness poorer than we advance. A vulnerability tested positive for hopeful thinking, solved wilder than the ownership. To be or not to be. Asks more of being's will. The only bride of mankind. But that women are merely the likelihood of that mankind. I say all this knowing more about what it feels like to say it than what it is I'm saying as a matter of faith. That vulnerability is the author of sacrifice in all its use. Only vulnerability is worth the savings. How closer than reach does all the evidence go its own way? Like being vulnerably newer than complaint. Like when the veil of sacrifice was torn, and the miracle assured the lame counted healed by the lameness evident of the miracle's saving. The very evidence was then miraculously enhanced of itself. A vulnerability only as expressive as to be outlived, understood by more than expressed. What else would have been here before us to be more of? The newest thought is the preview of the present. Yet newer than that is the present point of view. More faithful than fact can debate its dreamt of, such signs are more mortal than facts. I would go so far as to say that God decides before thought, worthy of it, in that infinite, leading life to flash before our very eyes, taking the easiest moments and the most challenging moments, and averaging them out only as familiar as the ease would naturally lead when set to such sorts, to focus in on now. To focus in on all of now, so shines a good grace. These kinds of thoughts are family, only to be as multitasking as a family of thoughts only sacrifice can gather, yielding one thought to the next. God's very artistic architecture of the mind. Hope is the address of its love only lived out, all in good faith. How blessed is beauty crazy about itself? How crazy did the cure go to reach it? Any unexpected learning skill must be of spirit, because only of spirit is it as trustworthy as only one can think, all one can think of, so infinitely. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, can 1,000 tests have the same answer? Can identical tests experience the same answer differently? Can the very thought completely involved to bless come without initiative? I answer The poor is all the generosity of being around an entertainer of any education. So freed by hope is newer, to love the same, only to be found by faith all only as likely as one God. Is beauty the only law? It's everywhere, and everywhere within. Go there. The more access our works have to us, the bigger the brilliance is built to gather ourselves from the belief of how vulnerable it is, becoming less to and of incomplete, as less of anyhow takes from all, other than as vulnerable as so creative. Our vulnerability is witnessing every word out of our minds the most. Lifting vulnerability to love's level of light is as learned of art as before it's left up to it. Is wildly happy as even tears are the truer laughter. The emotions of one are the tribute to all. The unprotested protection is as humor does, such as the soul. Isn't it funny how bowing down up to God is like a best man speech at a wedding town? Isn't that mankind, though? All things of any imposing God parted mankind's way with Christ. All going back to Ezekiel 28. Infinitely founded language, chosen kept to self, is anyhow only as forsaken as for more, one more of how. As inventive as love is about now. How keen does vulnerability keep the score schooling? How clearly God covenants godliness. How close that we get vulnerability for free. Kept holy to vulnerability, as good as holy gets. A wise awakening of the score, only to return infinitely to celebrating that life. Written in our eyes, calmer than the conscience, but for the conscience, yes, mystery reflected in organized coincidence. How granted a vulnerability in a world of pathologically fitting more of it. Such as vulnerability is the direction of the light, truer of itself. Much like a foretold fate has only vulnerability to look for making of it. The vulnerability is how much all the content of space, time, and force is only as unconscious as it could ever, and likewise did, get fully through to consciousness. Set forth to free the way of lifting vulnerability into itself and out of its way. The universal language of faith, hope, and love. The momentum of all universal act is so mysterious to its theatrical eventuality of inheriting now a vulnerability lighter than life. It's only so of love. Why did the truth have to torture Jesus' trust? Is that how much he trusted us? Maybe somehow when we torture our trust, but far from doing so, just approach it, we find approach through torturing our trust. but far from doing so. We find how far we get from idolizing our trust, and how close we get to trust carrying the sacrifices of life. I shall not want masters the slavery of the heart.